What happens when a people pushed to the edge finally rise up against an empire that thought it could crush them? The Iceni tribe, led by one of history's most fierce warriors, Queen Boudica, gave the Romans a fight they never saw coming. The struggle for freedom wasn't just a battle. It was a symbol of defiance that still echoes through time. But did the Romans ever imagine the intensity of what was about to unfold in Britain? Let's set the scene. The Iceni were one of the most prominent Celtic tribes in ancient Britain. They lived in what is now Norfolk, and their lands stretched across the eastern coast of the island. Known for their warrior spirit and deep connection to their ancestral lands, the Iceni held a prominent place among the Celtic tribes. But these people weren't just fighters. They were skilled traders, farmers, and craftsmen, with a rich culture and an unbreakable bond to their homeland. The Iceni's status as a proud tribe meant they were no strangers to conflict. But when the Romans arrived on British shores, things were about to change. In 43 CE, the Roman Empire, eager to expand its reach, launched a full-scale invasion of Britain. The Celts, including the Iceni, were forced to face a new, powerful enemy that sought to conquer them. At first, the Romans tried to establish a peace of sorts with the Celts. The Iceni, like many tribes, were forced to agree to a treaty. They maintained a fragile alliance with the Romans, agreeing to remain peaceful, but with a growing sense of unease. The Romans offered a semblance of cooperation, but behind the scenes, their ambitions were always focused on domination. The Iceni may have been left alone, but their freedom was already slipping away. Then, in the midst of this uneasy peace, a woman emerged who would change everything. Her name, Boudica, the queen of the Iceni tribe. Strong, fierce, and determined, Boudica was more than just a queen. She was a symbol of resistance, the embodiment of everything the Iceni stood for. Boudica wasn't just born into power, she was forged by hardship. As the wife of King Prasutagus, she was well connected in Roman circles. But when her husband died, the Romans dishonored their agreement, seizing the Iceni's land and wealth. To add insult to injury, they subjected Boudica to brutal treatment, publicly flogging her and raping her daughters. This was the breaking point, the spark that set the Flames of Revolt ablaze. Boudica would lead her people into battle, not just for land, but for dignity and justice. The Romans thought they could take what they wanted without consequences. They underestimated the power of a people united under a leader who refused to bend. The betrayal was complete. When Boudica's lands were seized, her family was violated, and her people were humiliated. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a violation of everything the Iceni held dear. Boudica knew that the only way to reclaim her tribe's honor was to fight back, and so she rallied her people, uniting the Iceni and other Celtic tribes to rise against the Roman invaders. The stage was set for one of the most shocking rebellions in history. With a battle cry that could be heard across the land, Boudica led her army into action. The Iceni warriors, joined by other tribes with a shared hatred for the Romans, began to take back what was theirs. The first strikes were swift and devastating. Roman settlements were burned to the ground, including the Roman capital of Camulodunum, modern-day Colchester. The Iceni were unstoppable, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. The Romans were caught off guard by the scale and intensity of the revolt. They had underestimated the strength and fury of the Celtic people, and now they were paying the price. The rebellion reached its peak at the Battle of Watling Street, a historic confrontation that would determine the fate of the Iceni tribe and Boudica's vision of freedom. The Romans, led by General Suetonius Paulinus, were cornered and outnumbered. But they had something the Iceni did not: well-trained soldiers, discipline, and strategy. Boudica's forces, though powerful, lacked the military organization needed to defeat the Romans on their own terms. In a final showdown on the narrow road of Watling Street, the Romans made their stand. Despite their fury and bravery, the Iceni were eventually overwhelmed. Boudica's forces were decimated, and the rebellion came to a tragic end. The defeat of Boudica and the Iceni was a devastating blow. The Romans took swift and brutal action to restore their control. Boudica's fate remains a mystery. Some say she took her own life to avoid capture, while others believe she was killed by the Romans. The Iceni tribe was left in ruins, their lands confiscated, their leaders crushed. But despite the loss, the rebellion left a lasting mark on the Romans. They had been made to fear the power of a united Celtic force, and they would never forget the fierce resistance of the Iceni. While the rebellion may have failed, the legacy of the Iceni and Boudica lives on. Over the centuries, she has become a symbol of resistance, courage, and the fight for freedom. Her story is remembered as one of the most powerful rebellions against Roman imperialism. In modern times, Boudica is often celebrated as a heroine, a woman who fought for justice, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Her legacy has inspired countless people in their own struggles for freedom and dignity. The Iceni, like many Celtic tribes, were deeply rooted in their spiritual beliefs, and these beliefs undoubtedly played a significant role in their resistance against the Romans. Their worldview was shaped by a profound connection to nature and the divine, where every tree, river, and mountain had a spiritual significance. To the Iceni, fighting for their land was more than just a physical battle. It was a spiritual one, as they believed their gods and ancestors were watching over them. Druids, the spiritual leaders of the Celts, were likely central figures in guiding the rebellion. While history doesn't offer a clear account of the Druids' direct involvement, we can imagine how their teachings, focused on nature, fate, and divine justice, could have influenced the Iceni's resolve. Perhaps it was in the sacred groves, under the canopy of ancient oaks, that Boudica and her people found the strength to rise against the mighty Roman Empire. For the Iceni, the rebellion wasn't just about reclaiming land. It was about restoring balance and receiving divine justice. In their eyes, their gods would reward their bravery, and they would fight for the freedom of their people with the belief that their actions were in harmony with the will of the divine. The Iceni tribe, like many Celtic peoples, were deeply connected to their spiritual beliefs. Their relationship with nature was not just a matter of survival, but one of reverence and respect. The land, the trees, and the rivers were all seen as sacred, each holding spiritual significance. The Iceni believed in the power of their gods, and it was likely that their spiritual connection to the land helped fuel their determination to fight against the Roman invaders. Religion played a key role in uniting the Celtic tribes. Their spiritual leaders, the Druids, were not just advisors, but spiritual guides who could shape the destiny of a people. While we don't have direct evidence of Druidic involvement in the Iceni rebellion, their influence would have been felt deeply. It's likely that the Iceni and other Celtic tribes saw the fight against the Romans as a battle not just for land, but for their very way of life, their identity, and their spiritual freedom. The divine right to protect their homes and sacred places would have been a driving force, and the Iceni believed that their gods would reward them for standing up to foreign invaders. The rebellion was, in many ways, as much a spiritual fight as it was a military one. When the Iceni tribe rose up against the Romans, it sent shockwaves through the empire. Though the rebellion ended in defeat, the Romans were forced to reassess their approach to governing the Celtic tribes of Britain. The rebellion exposed the vulnerabilities in Roman rule, particularly the capacity of native tribes to unite and resist Roman domination. Following the revolt, the Roman Empire increased its military presence in Britain, constructing new forts and imposing stricter controls over local tribes. The Romans also became more ruthless in their dealings with the Celts, realizing that they could no longer afford to treat the tribes as subjects to be placated. The Iceni revolt also triggered a shift in Roman tactics. The empire, once focused on diplomacy and alliances, now adopted a more direct and forceful approach to suppressing any signs of rebellion. The brutality with which the Romans crushed the Iceni rebellion served as a reminder to other Celtic tribes that defying Rome came with dire consequences. The Iceni's uprising forced the Romans to rethink their strategy, but it also marked the beginning of an era where rebellion was met with swift and violent retribution. The Iceni tribe's struggle for freedom is a tale of courage, betrayal, and the unyielding human spirit. Their fight wasn't just about land. It was about fighting for what's right, for their families, and for their future. So what can we learn from the Iceni? Their resilience in the face of oppression reminds us that no matter how powerful the enemy, the desire for freedom is a force that cannot be easily destroyed. And with that, the story of the Iceni tribe's fearless stand against the Romans comes to an end. But don't go anywhere, because we're about to start something entirely new. Our next video marks the beginning of Season 2, Episode 1, where we shift our focus to early medieval Britain. Get ready to dive into the world of the Anglo-Saxon invasions, a crucial chapter in British history that shaped the country as we know it today. What drove these fierce warriors to invade and settle in Britain? How did their arrival change the landscape forever? Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Before we venture into this exciting new season, make sure you've caught up on all the previous videos. If you haven't watched them yet, you might miss key pieces of history that will make the next episode even more thrilling. From the Celtic tribes' struggles to the rise of the Romans, everything we've discussed so far sets the stage for this new chapter. So, take a moment to catch up, and then get ready for an unforgettable dive into early medieval Britain in the upcoming season. See you there.